Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good day. In this presentation, I would like to share with you on how we're going to change our final examination assessment into the coursework. Right? Basically, this is my presentation. First, I'm going to explain the reason for us to convert our final exam assessment into coursework. Second, I'm going to explain to you methods on how we can actually transform or converted our final exam into coursework. And thirdly, how are we going to implement the method that I mentioned just now. Okay. Basically, I think that all of us are aware that due to the COVID-19, and then the government have enforced movement control order. So all teaching and learning process starting from 18 to 31st of March has been suspended, and university have decided that even we resume on 1st of April, teaching and learning will be online as well. And it is not only about teaching and learning. Due to that also, what happened is that there will be no examination in the traditional mode will be implemented by UUM. So no face-to-face final examination, or university only allow online final examination, or university requested the final exam to be converted into coursework. For in this regard, the top management of SMTC have decided that we all undergraduate courses will be converted from final exam into the so-called coursework. So this is the decision that we have made, and due to that also, we have to be aware that although MQA gives some flexibility on this, but what I'm proposing here is we try to still working within the framework that imposed by the so-called MQF, and probably our final exam is met with LOC, or Learning Outcome Cluster 1, and then how this Learning Outcome Cluster 1 we're going to convert it into our coursework, right? So basically, there are three methods or techniques that we can convert our final examination to coursework. Firstly, through what we call introduce a new component in the current coursework assessment. For example, we may convert our final examination, which carry the weightage of 40%, into quizzes or tests in the so-called coursework. Secondly, what we can do is we can actually absorb the LOC1, Learning Outcome Cluster 1, which map in the final examination. We absorb into existing what we call components or assessment that we already planned for our course, right? And thirdly, what we can do is we can actually combine both, introduce a new component, as well as part of it we absorb in the existing assessment or assignment in our coursework. Okay, now how are we going to convert this final examination into the so-called coursework? Okay, the first step that we need to aware here is that we have to really understand what are those CLOs actually involved in the final examination. Right? Some of the courses may have map one CLO with the final exam. Some of the courses may map 2 or 3 CLOs with the final exam. So the first thing we need to do is to identify what are those CLOs involved? When we're talking about final exam, basically it's all about LOC 1, Learning Outcome Cluster 1, right? In this case, in this example of the course, we found that CLO 1 and CLO 2 will be assessed in the final exam. So as the result, we have to think now, how are we going to convert these two CLOs assessment into the so-called current coursework, right? For example, in this case, I have CLO 1, which carry weightage of 20%, and I have CLO 2, which carry another 20%. So this CLO 1 and CLO 2, which carry 20 and 20%, need to be absorbed, transferred, or converted into the so-called coursework. Okay, after we identify the CLOs that related, the next step is we have to make a new mapping of our 40% or 50% assessment in final exam into the so-called current assessment, right? In this case, basically, I only have 3 CLOs which I'm going to assess in my course, and then these 3 CLOs, they are met with, for example, LOC 1 is met with final examination, LOC 2 group assignment and online assignment, and LOC 3D is met with individual assignment. So when I want to do the changes here now, so I have to focus on the final exam, which is LOC 1. And I decide to take the third, what we call strategy. In the previous slide, I mentioned to you there are 3 strategies. We may introduce new one, we may absorb into the existing one, or we may combine. In this case, I would like to combine. I'm using the strategy that combine between the so-called new component and existing component. So what I'll do now is I will map my final examination into this. Alright, like the first one, I would like to absorb 10% of the weightage to individual assignment. Right? So what happened here is that, so this final examination, the 10% will be absorbed or will be transferred into individual assignment. And this I considered to represent the CLO2. Remember, I have 2 CLO, CLO1 and CLO2 mapped with the final exam. The second one, I would like to take another 10% of my final examination weightage, and I will transform or convert it into online assignment. So the second one, online assignment, I will add another what we call LOC, right? So now online assignment here, I have LOC 1 and LOC 2. Individual assignment, I have LOC 3D together with LOC 1, right? And another 10%, I would like it to be assessed in a new component, which is quiz 1. So I will create another element of another component of assessment, which is quiz 1, and this will carry 10% of the weightage. And another one, I would like to have the second quiz to assess my student to replace the final exam, which also carry 10%. So I will have another component, which is quiz, which carry 10%. Right? So now I'm ready mapped my final examination. I've already converted into the fully coursework. Right? So the third step, what I need to do now is I need to make a new what we call mapping, which clearly indicate the percentage or the weightage of all my new and additional existing assessment. Okay, so for example over here, if you can see in this revised assessment table, there is no more final examination, but there are two new components, which is quiz 1 and quiz 2, right? So the first one, I say that I'm going to absorb 10% into the individual assignment. This is where I have already indicate here individual assignment. So now individual assignment 1, individual assignment, previously I have only LOC 3D, but now also I have LOC 1. Okay, the second one, the online assignment, previously I have only LOC 2, but now I have LOC 1, which I absorb from the final exam that carry 10% of weightage. And then I introduce a new component of assessment, which is quiz 1. It's carry 10% of what we call the weightage of the final exam. And the fourth one, I have also introduced another new component for my course in order to replace 10% weightage of my final exam, which is quiz 2. So this is how I actually now indicate to you or show you how changes have been made into our assessment. Okay, and when we make these changes, one thing that you have to bear in mind, you need to kind of like revise your rubric. For example, for the individual assignment, since previously I only have LOC 3D, but now since I include LOC 1 as well, so I need to revise the rubric so that the rubric also were able to assess LOC 1. Okay, same thing with online assignment. Okay, and another thing is that I also like to emphasize that the best is not to change the weightage of existing what we call percentage of weightage of marks for each of CLOs. If you still remember, the CLOs weightage we already have in our OBE, and then what we do now is we just do modification. We don't, change or deduct or increase whatsoever. So we remain with the weightage of the CLO. It's just that we do some modification in order to address issues of the non-final examination. Okay, so be aware that all the weightage of the CLOs should be similar to the CLOs that we have created in our original OBE document. Right, so over here you can see that all over here didn't change. No, it's similar to what I have originally. So that's all on how we convert the final examination assessment into what we call coursework. With that, I hope that you're able to convert now your final examination. You may have 40% or 50%. Now you can convert 100% into the so-called coursework. So with that, I end my presentation. Wish you all the best. Good luck. Thank you.